Before you call it disrespect, pause. Because what looks like disrespect isn't always disrespect. And I really want you to sit with that for a second. Because I've seen that happen over and over again. A child says something or responds in a certain way, and immediately it gets labeled. That was disrespectful. But let's slow that down. What are we actually seeing in those moments? Sometimes it's tone, sometimes it's eye contact, or the lack thereof. Sometimes it's how quickly a child responds, or how they respond back. And those things can feel sharp, unexpected, out of line. But here's the part that often gets missed. What you're seeing might not be disrespect. It might be a misinterpretation. Because behavior doesn't carry one fixed meaning. Not across every home, not across every culture, not across every environment. I've seen a child be labeled disrespectful for something that was completely normal in the environment they come from. The way they speak, the way they respond, the way they carry themselves. None of that felt out of place to them. But in a different setting, it was read differently. And when that happens, the child becomes the problem, instead of the interpretation being questioned. When I'm looking at behavior through a culturally responsive social emotional learning lens, this is where I slow things down. Because I'm not just asking, what did they do? I'm asking, what does this mean in their context? Because tone doesn't have one meaning. Eye contact doesn't have one meaning. Even how a child responds to an adult doesn't have one fixed meaning. In some environments, directness is normal. In others, it's seen as rude. In some spaces, children are expected to speak up. In others, they're expected to be more reserved. So when a child moves between those spaces, they're adjusting constantly, reading the room, figuring out what's expected, trying to respond in a way that fits. And if we don't recognize that, we move straight to correction without clarity. Because behavior without context gets misinterpreted. And when that happens, we label the child instead of understanding them. So instead of going straight to, that was disrespectful, this is the shift. Pause. And get clear on what you're actually seeing. You might ask yourself, was that intentional? Is this how they've learned to communicate? Am I interpreting this through my own expectations? And sometimes you can ask the child directly, hey, tell me what you mean by that, or help me understand what just happened there. Because that moment is not just about correcting behavior, it's about understanding it. And when we skip that step, we risk mislabeling a child instead of actually seeing them. So next time something feels like disrespect, pause, look again, and make sure you're responding to what's actually there, not just what it looked like at first. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I'm Faith, and this is Cultural SEL. I share practical tools and reflections that connect social emotional learning with culture, identity, and belonging, so children feel confident in who they are, where they come from, and how they move across different spaces. Check the description for tools and resources.